If you've ever typed, "How did Peppa Pig" into Google, the first thing it tries to finish for you is die. Not, "How did Peppa Pig start?" Not, "How old is Peppa Pig?" Die. Millions of people have searched, convinced there's a lost episode where Peppa is poisoned by her own parents. Here's the thing. That episode is real, in the sense that someone really wrote it. It's just that it was never on television, and the truth about where it came from is stranger than the hoax. So today, I want to actually walk you through it, not just tell you, "No, it's fake," and leave. Anybody can do that. I want to show you the exact place this thing was born, the year, the platform, the reason it fooled so many people, and then the part almost nobody talks about, how Google itself, without meaning to, kept this rumor breathing for the better part of a decade, because the how it spread is genuinely more interesting than the rumor. By the end, you're going to understand a small, slightly uncomfortable truth about the way lies survive on the internet. And it involves you. Let's get into it. The legend as people know it. Let's start with the story as it's told, because you've probably bumped into a version of it without ever going looking. The way it circulates goes something like this. There's supposedly a lost episode of Peppa Pig. A final one. An episode that aired once, or was pulled before it aired, or leaked online, depending on who's retelling it. And in this episode, something goes very wrong. The cheerful pink cartoon pig you've seen on lunchboxes and pajamas and every toddler's television screen on Earth. She dies. In the darkest versions, her own parents are responsible. I'm going to be careful here because this is a hoax about a children's character, and the whole point of these stories is that they're built to shock you. So I'm not going to sit here and act out the gory details. That's not the interesting part. The interesting part is that people believe it, and belief is a thing you can actually investigate. And here's the wild bit. There's no video. There has never been a video. Nobody has ever produced this so-called lost episode because it doesn't exist as an episode. What people point to instead is a strange little pile of secondhand evidence. The first piece is the search bar itself. Open Google, start typing, "How did Peppa Pig?" and watch what the machine suggests you might mean. It offers you die. That single autocomplete suggestion has probably convinced more people than any story ever did because it feels like the internet quietly confirming something. Like Google knows something you don't. The second piece is screenshots. Fuzzy images that get passed around social media. A block of text formatted to look like a script, a dark thumbnail, a title card that looks vaguely official. Stuff that gets reposted with captions like, "Did anyone else see this as a kid?" or "They took this episode down." And once a screenshot exists, it stops mattering where it came from. It just exists, floating, getting screenshotted again, each copy a little more removed from any source. The third piece is the search results themselves. Type the question in and you'll find forum threads, Reddit posts, entire videos of people reacting to it, articles debunking it. And here's the trick your brain plays. Even the debunks look like confirmation. If this many people are writing, "No, this isn't real," some part of you goes, well, there has to be something here. Or why would everyone be talking about it? So you end up with a rumor that has no actual evidence at its center, but has an enormous ring of evidence around the outside. Screenshots of screenshots, discussions of discussions, an autocomplete suggestion feeding a search that feeds an article that feeds another search. So millions of people believe this. The question is why? Because none of it is real. And the real story, once you find it, is honestly better than the myth. Where it actually came from. Okay, here's the part you came for. Where did this thing actually start? It traces back to a website called Wattpad. And if you've never used it, Wattpad is a self-publishing platform, a place where anybody, and I mean absolutely anybody, can sign up for free and post whatever they want to write. Romance, fan fiction, poetry, horror, teenage diary entries, all of it, side by side, no gatekeepers, no editors, no approval process. You write a thing, you hit publish, and it's live for the world. Somewhere around 2014, a user on that platform wrote a horror story, a short piece of fiction that took Peppa Pig, this globally beloved, aggressively cheerful toddler show, and imagined a disturbing ending for it. That's it. That's the origin. Not a studio, not a leak, not a banned broadcast, A person at a keyboard writing a scary story and posting it to a website where scary stories get posted by the thousands. And Peppa wasn't even a special target. This story was part of a whole wave of writing where people took wholesome, family-friendly properties and imagined the darkest possible version of them. Peppa was one name on a long list. The same thing was being done to cartoon characters you grew up with, to kids' shows from every country, to mascots, to anything bright and safe and famous enough that twisting it felt like a thrill. This genre has a name, and it's worth knowing because it explains the whole mechanism. It's called Creepypasta. Creepypasta is internet horror fiction. The word is a mangling of copypasta, which just means a block of text that gets copied and pasted around the web. So creepypasta is literally scary text that spreads by being copied. But here's the crucial part. The defining feature of good creepypasta isn't the scares. It's the disguise. These stories are deliberately written to feel like real leaked artifacts. Not once upon a time. More like, I found this tape. My uncle worked at the studio. There's an episode they don't want you to see, and I'm going to tell you what's on it. The whole craft of the genre is making fiction wear the costume of a documented fact. The best ones read like a report, flat, matter-of-fact, full of specific little details that a made-up story wouldn't bother with. A production code, a date, a description of static on the screen. Those details aren't there to scare you. They're there to make you believe, and that styled to look real quality is precisely why this stuff jumps the fence from story someone wrote to thing people think actually happened. So let me say the sentence plainly, because this is the whole video in one line. It was never an episode. Someone just wrote a scary story. There was no lost broadcast. There was no pulled final episode. Nothing was ever animated. Nothing ever aired and got taken down. The company that makes Peppa Pig never made this, never scripted it, never sat on some dark secret version in a vault. A stranger on a writing website invented it, dressed it up to look like a leaked artifact, and hit publish. Everything else, the screenshots, the search results, the 10 years of people whispering about it, all of that grew out of that one act of fan fiction the way mold grows out of a single spore. Which raises the actual mystery. Because plenty of people write creepypasta, and most of it is read by a few dozen people and then vanishes forever. So why did this one refuse to die? Why it spread. This is where it gets genuinely interesting, and this is the part I really want you to stick around for, because it's not really about Peppa anymore. It's about how a false thing gets strong enough to outlive the truth. Start with the character. Peppa Pig is not a neutral property. She has engineered wholesomeness. It's a show about a preschool pig who jumps in muddy puddles and loves her family and giggles a lot, aimed at kids so young they can barely talk. It is one of the safest, gentlest, most harmless pieces of media on the planet. And that's exactly the fuel. Because the darker your fake version is, the bigger the gap between the real thing and the fake thing. And that gap is what makes people share it. A dark version of an already dark show is barely worth mentioning. But a dark version of Peppa Pig? That's transgressive. It feels forbidden. It's the kind of thing you send to a friend with the message, "You're not gonna believe this." The contrast does the work. The sweeter the source, the more shocking the corruption, the faster it travels. So the very thing that makes Peppa harmless, that total, glowing innocence, is the thing that made her a perfect target. But contrast alone doesn't keep a rumor alive for a decade. Trends burn out. Shocking things get old. Something else has to be pumping oxygen into this. And this is the part I think is genuinely clever, the part almost nobody points at. It's Google, and it's you. Follow the loop with me, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. A handful of people read the story and get curious. Is this real? So they do the natural thing. They go to a search engine and they type, "How did Peppa Pig die?" Now, a search engine doesn't know truth from fiction. It only knows popularity. It registers that a lot of people are typing this exact phrase, so it starts helping. It puts that phrase into autocomplete, so that the next person who types, "How did Peppa Pig?" gets the word "die" offered up automatically. Now think about what that does to the next person. They weren't even looking for this. Maybe they were about to ask how old the character is, or when the show started. But the machine suggests "die," and their brain lights up. Wait, why would Google suggest that unless something happened? So they click it. which is another search, which tells the algorithm this phrase is even more popular, which pushes it even higher in autocomplete, which shows it to even more people, who click it, who make it more popular. You see the shape of it. It's a wheel that turns itself. The rumor didn't survive because it was true. It survived because enough people checked whether it was true. Every single skeptic who typed the question in to debunk it, every person who went, "That's ridiculous, let me just confirm it's fake," cast a vote that told the machine this was a thing people care about. Curiosity, not belief, is what kept the lights on. The doubters fed it just as much as the believers. And that's the trap of it. Normally, we think a lie survives because people are gullible, but this lie survived largely because people were curious enough to check. The act of verification became the engine of the myth. You cannot debunk your way out of a loop like that because the debunking is another search, and the search is the fuel. Now zoom out, because Peppa is not special here. This exact thing happens to nearly every giant children's property in the world. Pick a beloved cartoon, a famous mascot, a show that raised a generation, and I promise you there's a lost episode, a banned version, a dark original meaning, a suicide rumor, a creepy hidden frame rumor floating around it. It's practically a law of the internet. Take something wholesome, multiply it by global fame, and you've built a magnet for dark fan fiction. The bigger and sweeter the thing, the more people want to imagine breaking it. Peppa just happens to be one of the biggest and sweetest, so she caught one of the stickiest myths, the real lesson. So here's what I actually find unsettling about all this, and it's got nothing to do with a cartoon pig. This story is a perfect, tiny model of how misinformation actually works in the real world. Not the dramatic kind, with masterminds and conspiracies. The everyday kind, the kind that just seeps in. Because notice what never happened here. Nobody ever had to prove the Peppa death episode was real. No evidence was ever required. No episode was ever produced. The thing became true in the culture. True enough that millions of people half believe it. True enough that it shapes what a search engine suggests, without ever once being true in reality. All it needed was three things. It needed to be searched. It needed to be screenshotted, and it needed to be half remembered. That's the recipe, and it's frighteningly cheap. Searched, so the algorithms amplify it. Screenshotted, so it travels without its source and can't be traced back to some guy on Wattpad in 2014. And half remembered, because the half memory is the most dangerous part of all. Years later, somebody goes, "Wait, wasn't there some messed up Peppa episode? I feel like I heard about that." They don't remember it was fiction. They don't remember where they saw it. They just have a vague residue of having encountered it, and a vague residue feels an awful lot like a real memory. That fog is where hoaxes live forever. And here's the reframe I can't quite shake. This hoax survived because of us, not because of a liar, because of an audience. Every person who typed it in to see if it was real became a working part of the machine that kept it real. The rumor outsourced its own survival to the curiosity of the very people trying to figure out if it was nonsense. We were the engine. We are right now. Because if this video does well, if enough of you go type it in to double check what I said, guess what that does to the autocomplete? I'm not even mad about it. It's just a genuinely strange thing to realize, that a piece of misinformation can be functionally immortal, not because anyone's pushing it, but because everyone keeps checking on it. And just so you know I'm not cherry picking, the death episode isn't even the only false Peppa story out there. There's a whole cluster of them. There are banned episode rumors. There are the mishearing rumors, where people swear a character said something they absolutely did not say, usually because a line got clipped, sped up, or captioned wrong and then passed around as proof. Every one of them follows the same pattern. A tiny seed of nothing, dressed up to look like a leak, amplified by people checking whether it's true, hardened into everybody knows by sheer repetition. Once you learn to spot the shape, you start seeing it everywhere, on every topic, far beyond cartoons. So let me bring it all the way back around and close the thing we opened with. You typed, "How did Peppa Pig?" into a search bar, or you've seen the screenshots, or a friend swore up and down there was an episode where she dies. And now you know the real answer. There is no lost episode. There is no banned broadcast. There is no dark secret in a studio vault. There's a horror story that a stranger posted to a free writing website around 2014, styled to look like a leaked artifact that got loose and never came back. It was never an episode. Someone just wrote a scary story. And the reason it feels so real, the reason it's followed you around for years, is that a search engine mistook our collective curiosity for a fact and started handing it back to us as a suggestion. Fake episode. Real story about how lies spread. A search loop that fed itself on our own doubt. That's the whole thing. So I'll leave you with one question, and I want you to actually be honest in the comments, because I already know some of you were nodding along at the start. Did you believe the Peppa death episode was real before you watched this? Not, did you hear about it? Did some part of you actually think it happened? Confession booth's open. I want to see how many of us got pulled into the loop before we even knew there was a loop.